Well, there's this graphic going around that was posted on Reddit, and it's been shown around on Twitter, and it's been tweeted at me quite a few times. So we're going to talk about that. On top, we're going to talk about how Baldur's Gate 3 is not exactly a original game in itself. Everyone's putting up on a pillar because it's just a rehashed Divinity Sin 2 mod. So in a now deleted Reddit post, this was deleted by the moderators, not deleted by the person that put this post up there. This is the graphic everyone is using. And you know what? It makes it look absolutely amazing. It makes look Baldur's Gate 3 is completely dominating in the landscape. But then there's things on here when you look at it. You have Lethal Company, a game out in early access. You put out City Skylines, which is mired in their own controversy with their 30% FPS cap on their game. Sons of the Forest, did that game actually come out last year, or was that the year before? I feel like the Sons of Forest is a very old game at this point. And then you have Starfield. Starfield in the third spot here for sales garnered on Steam. This is not Game Pass. This is not worldwide sales. This is only on Steam. And then they have Hogwarts at $341 million sold on Steam. Do I believe that number? Well, there's a 15% margin of error here, so Hogwarts could easily come up to 400 million, 450 million, and Baldur's Gate 3 at 657 could come down to 500 million. Puts these two relatively close to the same, dependent on the way the market actually was. We don't know, because through the actual data that has been placed here from VGI, Video Game Insights, their own data is flawed. It's estimated to begin with. This is what they put out. Video Game Insights puts out a report on the way they see things. Most of these companies do, Steam Spy being one of them, and then whatever else was on that Steam BD page where they all estimate it. Like, we're talking estimations from 5 million to 28 million. That's the estimation. That's our target range. Right now, I feel like we put a target on the wall and we throw a dart at it, and that's what we say it is. Baldur's Gate 3 being in the top 10 is amazing. The isometric RPG category is generally not seen as a decent category when it comes to an industry standard for video games. It is not hailed as one of the biggest categories. So on that side of things, that's probably where Hasbro took their data. They probably went, you know what, they already had made up their minds. They let the people go that had greenlit the thing. A lot of people sit there and in my previous video, they say, oh, Hasbro had nothing to do with it. Hasbro owns the brand by having one person in that room with Larian Studios. Hasbro is investing anything into the game. They had they had value in there. They had everything in there. So everyone that wants to tell me that Hasbro didn't make the game, no, Larian Studios made the game. I understand that, but Hasbro still has an overreaching arm on top of their shoulder. I said 7 to 10 million sold of the game, and everyone's telling me that that's wrong. I put out there it's a financial failure because if you look at the data and you look at and you break down the numbers, Hasbro did not make enough money off this game, and I can tell you right now, something doesn't make sense. Either Hasbro wrote up a shit-ass contract for this, didn't make nearly enough off their royalties, or the game didn't sell as well as everyone thinks. 27 million copies of the game didn't sell that much. There's no way. There's no way. Cyberpunk 2077, after the DLC came out, had a surge in sales, and they have now sold the game, the base game, over 25 million of the copies have been sold. That's after 3 years of the game being out. 3 years. Hogwarts Legacy being at 22 million, Zelda being at 20 million. Those are actual reported numbers. Larian Studios has yet to put out an actual sales figure on how many copies have been sold of this game. And if they do, I will gladly sit here and report on it. I will gladly sit here and report on it. But the one thing that Larian Studios did put out there was that 40 million people actually voted for the Steam Awards. Larian Studios is putting the awards, the popularity, the brand behind it, trying to generate more interest in it. Instead of putting up the sales numbers and saying our game is doing amazingly well, no, it's everyone voted for this. 40 million votes into the whole system of the Steam Awards. That's my guess here. I'm not thinking they got 40 million votes to say that they're the best game out there. There's no way, considering that the user count for Steam is only 120 million in a month. I find it kind of surprising to even get the 40 million for the voting for the entire system. Now, if that's 40 million, not users, but 40 million votes across 11 categories, well, most people will vote on all 11 categories, so now you divide that by 11. So that's even less than what that is. Why it's unoriginal. It's an isometric RPG. These things have been done before. Larian Studios fundraised Kickstarter to make Divinity Sin. They used that same engine and transferred it into a Baldur's Gate 3 game. All they did was change the dimensions under the guise of Hasbro, changing the model for Dungeons and Dragons to work within the system, made new character models, and bam, you have Baldur's Gate 3. Nothing really is original here. It's all things that have gone in a sequence and have been amalgamated together to create this game. So those that are hailing that this is original and something new, it's the same thing that we see with Hogwarts Legacy, where the idea of Hogwarts Legacy, this open world concept, go around, they took factors from many different games and put it into one thing and making it new. Hogwarts is a brand new style IP. Yes, it's the Harry Potter universe, which is an entire universe, but then you're making a game for that, where Baldur's Gate 3 was the third rendition of a game, and in this case it looks like nothing more than a Divinity Sin 2 mod with romance. As the title states, I played Divinity Sin 2 in 2002. I loved it. Mind you, Larian Studios did an amazing job on the game minus the armor system. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 implements the Dungeons and Dragons system, and I have to say it's a great system for Larian Studios to approach to an RPG. However, the lack of an update, overall improvement of the QOL elements, party members issues, the same map, basically the same act for both games, from the copy and paste method leaves me wanting a bit. Obviously, mechanics are sound, but does anyone else think it's kind of lazy on their part? Would rate higher if they had changed some things rather than the exact copy and paste. I have seen this type of review or this type of posting for Baldur's Gate 3 across Steam, across Twitter, across many social media, and in fact, even in my comments section. Now, Video Game Insights, they actually put out some decent data. I can't say that they're not doing a decent job at this. Now, them saying Baldur's Gate 3 is a standout RPG, but they've got the reported $9 billion for Steam, 580 million games sold, 14,000 game releases, and 33 million people played on Steam. Although I thought that number was new in January, during the first week of January, so technically that's actually after the fact. The best performing games of 2023 trended to focus on quality, lack of microtransactions, and creativity coming from small teams. Oh look, the microtransactions are coming up again. This was something that Sid Alpha talked about in his video on me, saying that, this is a game that came out where there was no microtransactions. The entire list is games without microtransactions, Sid. Baldur's Gate 3 being at the top spot, which they very well could be on Steam. Games per units, which is what they've based it off of, and in full game releases is the actual thing. Even though they still have here, Lethal Company is a full game release, but they're not full game. They are early access game. Same with Sons of the Forest. These games made a buttload of money for Steam, and they're in their top 10 revenue generating games, much like a crowdfunding campaign for the early access. Okay, they also go into games that are possibly coming out. They say from D&D to Wizards to space exploration, RPG is one of the top categories. Well, here's the difference. Hogwarts played as a third person, run around in a world much like World of Warcraft, same with Starfield, but Baldur's Gate 3 was an isometric RPG, the top-down view, which generally in the industry has never really sold that well to begin with. So Baldur's Gate 3 being up there as the best version of Baldur's Gate is quite interesting in that sense, because there's a lot of people that wanted refunds of this game after all the romance and the nudity and everything else got put into the game, because they felt that it didn't, I feel, and a lot of those other people feel, that Baldur's Gate 3 is not the type of game that they were sold in the first place. Now, where VGI comes up with their methodology and their accuracy. We use a sample size of 55 publicly released Steam sales figures. So they're going off 55 games out of, it was 14,000 games that came out this year. An overall level, the VGN Insights algorithm, they're using an algorithm, nothing to do with the actual sales numbers, nothing to actually teach us where things are coming from, and it overestimates Steam games sold by a 3% margin. So everything is overestimated in the first place. An individual game level estimates that there is a 15 plus or minus margin of error, 15%. That is gigantic. That margin of error brings into question the entirety of the financials. The financials, they give you a good inside look of what's going on in the market, and you can look at the data and you take the data the way you take the data, but everything that they've said, everything I've said, everything that Steam BD puts up there, you have to take with a grain of salt. You have to sit there and say, okay, there's that. Does this make sense? Does that make sense? There's certain things here that just doesn't make sense. And that's where I'm trying to make sense in it all. I'm trying to put it out there. Everyone wants to tell me that I'm wrong, because that's what the internet does, and that's how things go, and I'm fine with that. Now, as things go, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 really does feel like it's just a romance sim mod that you could have added to Divinity Sin 2. They already copied and pasted the combat. They copied and pasted what looks like to be Act 1. And like I've said, I've seen this review quite a few times. It's no better than other games we've seen out there, like Dragon Age Origins is another one that I've seen it compared to. I've seen it compared to very many games. So everyone's saying it's an original game and is going to put the new benchmark for games out there. I have to say it's not. There's nothing out of the ordinary with the game. From everything I've seen, from everything I hear, it's something that they just put together with a new system. Overall, believe what you want to believe. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Take what these Steam third-party estimates with a grain of salt. They are not fact. With my video, majority watched maybe 90 seconds of the video, maybe a little bit more than that. So you didn't watch the whole video through. So obviously you're not seeing the analytics that I went through. And I said that there was approximately 7 to 10 million copies of the game sold, which is still a fairly decent amount. But when it came down to the financials, it doesn't make sense. You have Steam taking 30% off the top. You have $100 million placed into this game. And then Hasbro takes their cut. So ultimately, did they succeed? Sure, but financially, it didn't work for Hasbro. It didn't work for a lot of the market out there. And that's where that comes from. I shouldn't even have to sit here and explain this. And I know how my comment section is going to get lit up just for having another video on this topic. Anyway, I'm your proud Canadian Phoenix Cindershadow. If you're here at this point and you've stayed to the end of the video, subscribe to the channel, because I don't always go over Baldur's Gate 3. This isn't the topics that I like to cover through and through. It's interesting, not to say the least, but I know what it comes with, and I know the clevets that I'm going to get, and I can live with that. If you need someone that you got to sit there and feed all the negative stuff to and put it in my comments, so be it. Feed me. Feed me like Emperor Palpatine. Anyway, have yourselves a great day. I'm your proud Canadian Phoenix Cindershadow. I'm signing off here. I'll see you again very soon.